Good evening, welcome to Parshas Behar Bechukosai as we conclude Sefer Vayikra. And in Bechukosai, we have the famous section of the brachos and klalos, the blessings Hashem promises if we're loyal to Him, God forbid the punishments if we're not. We'll focus on the good stuff tonight, talk about the brachos, which starts with the words of Bechukosai Telechu. If you follow in the way of my chukim, my decrees, and you observe my mitzvos, so you do them, you get all the wonderful things. So if you listen to me, Hashem, if you're loyal, you're going to have your rain at its proper time. The earth is going to give bountiful produce. You're going to eat, be satisfied, and live securely in your land. And then the pasuk says, "V'nasati shalom ba'aretz," and I'm going to give peace in the land. You're going to lie down without trembling, without being afraid, nothing to be afraid of. No wild animals are going to attack you, no sword passing through your land. And on this bracha of shalom, of peace, Rashi mentions, he says, you're going to say, food and drink, we have all the plenty, we have rain, we have crops, harvest, parnasa, livelihood. But if you don't have peace, you have nothing. So that's why he says, Sati Shalom Bar is kind of concluding the final thing that says, this is really that seals the deal. You have peace and everything is wonderful. Shalom. Some of the Mepharshim point out, it's a little hard to understand. It seems to be redundant because after the livelihood and the sustenance, it says, "Vishavtem levetach be'artzachem." You're going to dwell securely in your land. Dwell securely in your land means peace. So what's this extra thing? V'nasei shalom art, and I'm going to give you peace in addition. So the Orach Chaim says, you have to understand, why is it necessary to say, after you said Vishavtem levetach, to say peace? He says, perhaps this is pointing to a different aspect of peace. Not peace from your enemies, but Bnei Yisrael Atzmam, the Jewish people themselves, that there should not be a dissension of hearts within the Jewish people. That among ourselves, that internally, we're going to have peace. And the Ramban, his first explanation on the pasuk, says also, you don't fight one another. So the previous psukim, we're talking about sustenance, and then you're going to live securely in Eretz Yisrael. No nations are going to torment you, and then I'm going to give you, finally, the stamp of peace internally, within the nation of Israel. Beautiful. But the question I have on this, Hashem, HaMavarech Hashem Yisrael B'Shalom, the one who blesses us with peace. We say this bracha in Shemona Esrei every day. I understand the idea of saying Hashem is the one who gives us peace, who saves us from our enemies. Boy, do we need help. In Eretz Yisrael, our brothers and sisters are under the gun in Eretz Yisrael. We need Hashem's brachos to save us from our enemies. That comes from Him. We can't control our enemies, but Hashem can. Hashem can protect us from them. But within ourselves, V'nasati shalom ba'aretz, Hashem is saying, that's our job. In other words, the Parsha starts with saying, we're going to be loyal. Is that our job, following Hashem's mitzvos? That part of that is how we treat each other and how we behave. So why is it that Hashem is the one who's giving us peace, that we get along? We're supposed to do that. If we don't do that, we don't deserve the brachos, because we're not doing the mitzvos that we say we're doing. So what's the pshat? What's the idea that the Mepharshim are pointing out here? This idea that Hashem will bless us with internal peace, more than what we're supposed to be doing ourselves. I'd like to suggest the following with one of my favorite memories of when I was a young man in Kollel in Israel. And we learned in the Beis Medrash in the Kollel, a bunch of 25-year-old somethings. And sharing the Beis Medrash with us for part of the day, for the afternoon, was another kollel, a senior's kollel. These were retired men, every one of whom had been in some field of education. They were teachers, they were rabbis, they were scholars, and they had the back of the Beis Medrash. I don't know, 8, 10 men, I forget how many there were. I remember, this is afternoon Seder, I remember with my chavrusa that we would kind of like give a little smile, waiting for the moment when, sure enough, every day, what would break out in this senior's kollel, and it was all Hebrew. Somebody stands up and says, "Lo! Lo! Ze lo mashikura man! Lo! Ze lo pashut!" They were screaming, "Ken! Beta! Tosut man!" And they yelled and screamed at the top of the lungs with a fire. Unbelievable. It was quite a show. Now they didn't do it the entire time. That would have been very distracting. But it was such a treat. It was so enjoyable, but especially because, wow, look at these guys. They're 60s, 70s, retired. Look at that fire. Look at that enthusiasm. Look how they go at each other. Boy, if only we had energy like that. But of course, did these people hate one another? Were they enemies? The Gemara Kiddushin, Daf Lav Mud Beis, based on Pasuk in Tehillim and backed up with a Pasuk in Chumash, says Amar Achia Bar Abba Fil Ha'avu Beno Harav Talmido. Even a father and a son, a Rebbe and his student, She'oskim B'Torah B'Shar Echad, and they're involved in Torah in the gates, Nasim Olim Zesed. They become enemies with one another. They're like enemies. Says Rashi, because they're arguing and saying, no, that can't be pshat. That's not what Rashi's saying. That's not what the Gemara is saying. That was fighting back just as hard. And then the Gemara says, but they don't leave before the real relationship comes true. They're best of friends. And of course, this is a father and a son, a Rebbe and a student. But the point is, any great Torah scholars passionate about getting the truth. The Gemara is saying they argue it out, and you think, my gosh, these people are enemies, but of course they're not. They're the best of friends. They love one another. So why are they arguing? They're arguing because they're passionate about saying what the truth of Torah is. This is what the Gemara is telling us about a good chavrusa. They go after each other, and afterwards, they're the best of friends. And one says, I have a great shidduch for you, my sister. And the other one says, wonderful. I would rather be no one's brother-in-law than yours. That's the feistiness and what we're seeing with these men in the kollel. And it's not just true with Talmud Torah itself, but in general, with Torah living. Machlokes, debate, arguing. We know, when you study Gemara, that machlokes is not just something that's okay, it's mandatory. You have to debate. You have to argue. Hashem created us, the Gemara says, every person looks different. In the same way we look different, our thoughts are different. How can I go ahead and hear you say something or do something that's what I think antithetical to Torah and just go along with it? That's not what Hashem wants. Hashem wants me to speak up, l'shem shamayim, and say, no, I think it's wrong. I think it's incorrect. It's got to be done respectfully and appropriately and with love and friendship. Machlokas l'shem shamayim is something that increases greatness, knowledge of Torah, truth of Torah, and kavod shamayim, the honor of Hashem. So there should be striving, there should be arguing, there should be feisty debate, there should be different opinions, and people should not be afraid to say it, but say, no, I'm sorry, this is wrong, this is not acceptable. I really believe that, honestly. And I'm saying it l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven. That has to be done. Has to be done, and must be done. And yet there's a danger that when one does that, and one argues l'shem shamayim, there's always the possibility that some of my personal desires creep in. That maybe this isn't 100% l'shem shamayim. That maybe what I'm saying here in defense of Hashem's Torah is also defense of my own honor. Maybe what I'm insisting as being right, I don't really 100% believe is right, and I have some ulterior motive. So as one is striving to go ahead and fight for what's right, and do it l'shem shamayim, for the kavod of Hashem, there's always the danger that maybe it will go wrong. And maybe it will turn into something that's less than machlokos l'shem shamayim, which is something that's dangerous and destructive. And so perhaps, just to suggest, maybe that's what we're being told here. That we're going to go ahead and we're going to learn the Torah, we're going to argue, we're going to debate it. And if we see people, acting in a way that's not appropriate, and we're called upon to say something, we're going to say something, l'shem shamayim. And in so doing, we recognize the dangers that it could, God forbid, go in the wrong direction. And that's when we need Hashem's brachos, for the Chalati Shalom Ba'aretz. That if we are really doing our best to make sure it is l'shem shamayim, and our only interest is what Hashem wants, and not what I personally want, and that's really what we strive to do, and we really strive to do it as a community together, then we can merit the blessings, not just of rain in its time, and prosperity, and peace from our enemies, but also that Hashem will help to ensure that we continue to make sure those debates, those arguments, those machas, those statements we make are truly Shem Shemayim. And then we'll have really the ultimate peace we look for. Everyone have a wonderful Shabbos.